is a proud graduate of the U.S. Army War College, class of '98. He holds a bachelor's degree from the U.S. Military Academy and a master's degree from the University of San Francisco. Major General Kuklo is married to Ginger, and they have 3 grown children and a Great Dane. Please, a warm welcome, Major General Kuklo.
Sergeant Q, relieve the first sergeant, if you could. First sergeant, thanks a lot. A little bit of military tradition that you're watching right here. The first sergeant, you need to run your company, man. Thanks. Cool. The first sergeant reacted most naturally because our non-commissioned officers are the keepers of the colors. And we saw that flag almost going down, so the first sergeant came and got it, and I'll keep another fantastic non-commissioned officer holding on to her for now. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's one of the most humbling honors of my 34 years in uniform to be participating in this dedication. When I was asked to do this several months ago, I accepted immediately. And then, my goodness. And then I researched who the keynote speakers were in the previous observances. And I was stunned. I mean, FDR? I was stunned you had asked me. I mean, look, I'm just another general. I mean, I actually had my team double check. We did. We called back and said, you sure you don't want me just to hold a flag or present a wreath or something? And any of my peers could do a better job today. I mean, the congressman, Colonel Scott Perry could do a better job than me today, but I'll do my best. But regardless, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very thankful that you asked a soldier to speak. You see, I'm thankful you asked a soldier to speak because we soldiers know the great value of commemorations. Those forcing functions that cause us to pause from our busy and distracting schedules and think about past sacrifices. The honor associated with actively engaging in the effort to make a wrong a right. And of course, they remind us of the horrible cost of conflict. Which is another reason why I'm thankful you asked a soldier, because I believe I represent the armed forces of today, who are the legacy of your ancestors, you sons of Union and Confederate veterans. Our heritage stems from those who were supremely motivated to raise this monument. Now, to them it is a monument, to us it is a monument to both sacrifice and reconciliation. And as one who has worn a uniform of a U.S. soldier for over 3 decades, I fully and very personally comprehend both concepts, sacrifice and reconciliation. I'd like to speak briefly to each. First, sacrifice. Sons of veterans, your ancestors had the unique and powerful bond of combat experience. I cannot adequately describe these family-like bonds. But let me describe them and their relevance to today's ceremony by relating a personal story. 3 years ago at this time, I was in the middle of a tour in Iraq. I had the honor of commanding a division of soldiers there. I lost soldiers, killed and wounded. As I'm sure you know, we have incredibly outstanding medical personnel, and when there are casualties, they are taken to a field hospital, and there they are either stabilized and prepared for further transport out of the combat zone to more fixed, secure, and highly capable medical facilities, or, should life-saving measures fail, the soldiers' remains are carefully but expeditiously prepared for transport back to the United States. Now, I'm not sure many folks realize it, but if the conditions support it, when a soldier is lost, just prior to the final transport of the remains, the chain of command has a brief, quiet moment of their own to bid their soldier farewell at the field hospital I speak of. The docs and the chaplain come out of the prep area and say to me, "You may go in now, sir." And then officer and NCO leadership are allowed to spend a quiet moment with the fallen. If they were on the scene at this base where my main field hospital was, I always let my brigade or battalion commanders go before me. And as they came out after their moment, we would exchange silent glances at each other as we passed each other in the darkness. The majority of my losses occurred during nighttime action, it seemed. And this look we exchanged was usually a strange combination of bitter sadness and grim resolve. And then I would go in alone to the dimly lit room and stand next to the body, or bodies, of my soldiers. If the prep and their injuries allowed it, I could look at their faces, their eyes closed, peaceful looking, actually. And there might be the hum of a generator outside or the blades turning on a nearby helicopter, But somehow those moments seemed awfully quiet. And while Division Command is an incredible honor, one of the downsides is that it's difficult to know all 21,000 of your soldiers. Of the casualties I speak of, I only knew a few of them well. But because of that bond I speak of, the sense of loss I felt for each of them was immense. My feelings and thoughts in one of those moments, of course, were very private, but I can describe them generally to you. Standing there next to my soldier, I felt responsibility and I felt guilt. I said a prayer for them and for their families and loved ones back home. I'll admit I also might have had a very brief moment where the dark part of my heart got the better of me, and I thought about what I wanted to do to those who caused my soldiers' death. But that was quickly replaced by determination, a grim and fierce determination for several things. That we would continue our mission and we would not let them down. That we would make him or her proud of us. That we would ensure their sacrifice was not in vain. And that they would never be forgotten. And that is why most of us in uniform who have lost soldiers can name them. Or we have little cards close by with their names, the dates, locations, and circumstances of their loss. Or we wear a memorial bracelet. Mine reminds me every day of an incredible young sergeant who's no longer with us. Reminds me of how he died. But another reason I wear it proudly is I'm hoping someone will ask me, pardon me, what's that on your wrist? And I get to tell the Sergeant Sam Kelsey story one more time. And his memory lives on. Those powerful memories mark you for life, but they motivate you too, to build and sustain places like this beautiful memorial, lest we forget. And I humbly believe I understand your ancestors, sons of Union and Confederate veterans, and I'm so thankful that you are still committed as organizations to ensuring the great sacrifice borne by their generation is not only recalled, but used properly as a guidepost for our great nation, so that part of our history, the sacrifice of our nation, does not repeat itself. Which brings me to reconciliation. Supported by the commitment exemplified by this light, this guidepost, our country has not seen civil war since the peace of 1865. Those 4 years were enough destruction, death, and intangible loss to mark us as a people. So scarring was that experience, the healing took a long, long time. It was no doubt difficult, incredibly difficult and slow. But veterans and sons of veterans led by example. And what a message if those who fought each other and carried the searing memories of the abject carnage of war, if they could clasp hands and forgive and unite for a common purpose, then why can't we all? And this is yet another reason I'm grateful you asked a soldier to speak today, because you see, no currently or recently serving soldier I know takes this reconciliation of ours for granted. I'll bet most Americans don't think about it, but I must tell you that my brothers and sisters in uniform have seen much of civil war in the last 20 and 30 years. We've seen it up close, personally, in all of its brutality. I've seen it in the Balkans, in Afghanistan, and in Iraq. Now, I'm sure out there in front of me right now there's an academic challenge to that statement. Apparently, the general does not know the difference between sectarian violence and civil war. Well, stand with me in that mud or that sand or on that city street with my fellow soldiers and see what war within a nation does to people who were once neighbors, friends, religious and ethnic groups living happily side by side for years, working side by side, intermarried, until some power-hungry person or group decided to highlight some meaningless difference and incite violence between regions or among factions to get what they want. These are places, ladies and gentlemen, where truth has a price and justice goes the highest bidder, or the better armed. These are places where there's absolutely senseless and vicious violence, a vacuum of credible security, good people living in fear, with little hope for their future, often looking to us in uniform, us American soldiers in uniform, and what the United States represents to give them hope for the future. We've seen these things and hope and pray, as you do, sons of Union and Confederate veterans, that it never comes back to these shores, never comes back to our land. And unfortunately, monuments alone, as beautiful and as meaningful as they are, cannot prevent war. But for what it's worth, as a representative of the Americans who have seen late 20th century and early 21st century versions of Civil War up close, I offer that this monument and those who are dedicated to its preservation serve two incredibly important purposes. First, you show others throughout the world what is possible with forgiveness, with reconciliation. You light the darkness of ignorance and show the world that it has been done and it can be done. And second, you also remind us here in the United States of America of the terrible cost of short-sighted polarization, the dangerous, slow road of creeping sectionalism, that like some strange social decay divides a united people over time. And may that never again happen to us. In closing, let me go back to that tough moment I told you about as I discussed sacrifice, saying farewell to my fallen. Each time I walked out of that hospital section and made that lonely trek back to my command post, I was left wondering if I was personally worthy of my soldier's sacrifice. And I found myself recommitting to live my life worthy of it, worthy of their sacrifice. So I'd ask you all today, during this special moment, in this very special place that honors such sacrifice, to do the same. Live a life worthy of the sacrifices of those who have gone before us and those currently willing to go for us all now, so that our freedom and the freedoms of others might survive, lest we forget. Thank you for listening to me.
Now, what a speech. Tim Tunshakers will regale us with a couple